Everyone, this is your third session of the day. Again, my name is Nikki Bruno. I'm a volunteer for IIBA in Canberra. Hopefully you've been enjoying your first two sessions and they were informative, giving you some enlightened perspectives for the day. So now ready for session 3, and just in case you missed the third session this morning, and sorry for those who didn't, just wanted to kick off again by thanking our major sponsor, who's Skills Development Group. And they have been awesome in supporting the FOBA events around Australia and online. Again, don't forget to reach out to IIBA directly if you want to present next year. Just join their organisation. They do some great work throughout the year, not just for our Festival of Analysis. Okay, once again, we'll get through as many questions as we can. I know we ran out of time before. At the end of the session, but to get you to the next session on time, if I have to cut in, please forgive me. So for this session, we have Neil Calvert, who's a seasoned leader in business analysis and transformation, and he specialises in leveraging visual data-driven methodology to empower organisational change. He's the founder and CEO of LINQ. He's revolutionised how business approach discovery with practical strategies, redefining the future of business success. In this session, you will discover practical ways to modernise analysis, build stronger business cases faster, and drive more effective collaboration and decision-making as VAs. So, with all of that said, get ready for a LINQ revolution. Let's give a big virtual clap for Neil Calvert. Neil, over to you.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you very much indeed for the introduction, and appreciation to IIBA for enabling me to present at FOBA. Here you've had a great event so far, so pleased to be here. Excuse my voice. I'm going to today give you a bit of an insight into my brain to start with, because I've been reflecting on the title that we gave for the presentation, and I don't want it to come across as if I have all of the answers to all of the problems that organisations suffer from the perspective of enabling digital transformation, continuous improvement and change inside the organisation. So I thought it was important to put some foundational thoughts in place to start with as to why I think that we as business analysts should be looking broader than maybe the traditional tools that we've been exposed to during our careers and are potentially using today. And that is really to stimulate a bit of discussion. So please do use the Q&A. If you have a question, if you have a challenge, if you don't agree with what I am saying, please do speak up, put your hand up. I really don't mind. I encourage it. My ambition for today is to inspire you with a bit of curiosity. I think it's underrated quality in people, especially today, given the TikTok generation, where everything that we seem to have to present and consume has to be done in 30-second snippets. So I hope at the end of this, there's a spark of curiosity. You're going to do some of your own research and build some of your own thinking. So that's kind of the pre-context of what I'm going to talk about today. As Nikki said, I'm the founder and chief exec of LINQ. We are a software as a service platform. I live in Wellington in New Zealand, so I live in your future. It is 25 to 1 in the afternoon with me. We have been doing this for 10 years. We're a stay-up, not a start-up. I don't think after 10 years of running a small business you can call yourself a startup anymore. But so we're fighting hard to create a tool that business analysts, amongst other users, can easily access. And the idea being, if you incorporate this into your tool set, you may be able to not only upskill yourself, but increase the value that you have as an individual inside the organizations that you work for. So that's what I'm trying to achieve today. So first up then, these are the things that I think about. These are the things that have inspired us to come up with LINQ. So 4 things, and I'll just dig a bit deeper into these. So very quickly, the first one, 70% of change and transformation projects fail. Why is that? If we accept that we're in the digital economy, why is there not more focus on our data and our information, and where that lives inside the organization and how people use it. So I want to explore that a bit more. Also, the pace of change continues to accelerate. The gap between where you are today and where you might want to be is just getting wider and wider and wider. AI being the current example of that pace of change. So why shouldn't our business decision making be able to keep pace with that speed of change? And therefore, do the tools that we access enable that? And which is the fourth bullet. The widely accepted tools that we have access to, do they actually allow us to contribute effectively to resolving the challenges that our organizations are facing? So those are my kind of initial four topics, and that'll segue into how we think we are responding to it. So the first one is this change failure rate, 70%. And I think it's important to define failure, because it's not that these projects, 7 out of 10, absolutely don't deliver anything. The explanation around failure that's given in the reports that you can go and find, it's a project or a delivery that did not actually deliver against the value that was assessed at the beginning of the project. So it might be that it partly succeeds as opposed to failing entirely, but that still constitutes a failure from a transformation project in that it didn't deliver everything that was expected of it when it started. So only 1 in 3 succeed fully. So that's the other stat, 33% are meeting all of the expectations that were met at the beginning of the project definition. And this is resulting in $900 billion US dollars of wasted investment per year. And just to put that into context, the Australian GDP at the end of 2025 is expected to be $1,791 billion. So nearly half of the GDP of Australia is being wasted every year in transformation projects that do not reach their goals. And the total investment is $1.3 trillion globally. So I look at this and I ask why. This statistic hasn't changed for 2 decades. It's been plus or minus 1, which I look at and really want to know why. Why are we happy continuing to do things the way that we potentially have always done them? And Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If this is true, what is it that we're doing that's wrong that leads to this failure rate? And there's lots of research and things out there, cause and effect, lack of the understanding of the full scope of change of a project, so that we are siloed. We think in this particular part of the business, forgetting that there are downstream consequences to changes made elsewhere in the business. So this interests me. It's something that we are continuing to explore, but it's been a very big driver for the work that we've done with LINQ. So that's number 1. Number 2 is this focus on content. So I think we accept we're living in the digital economy. If you are a believer in AI, you follow the progress of AI, you will absolutely agree that data is the secret sauce. It's absolutely paramount for successful AI. You can poison AI with invalid data. That's the latest thing that people are worried about. And yet we have this philosophy that is available to all of us, and it has been for since 2018, and that's infonomics, which is the information economy, principles of how you can measure, manage, and monetize information inside an organization, and therefore realize its value. There are some very well-established asset management rules for other assets that can be applied to data and information, which help us understand what we are able to deliver with that information. And it's not about saying, I have a list of customers, and if I sell it to an agency, they'll pay me for those contacts. It's about, can I put this piece of content with this piece of content to create something new, either intelligence or product that I can deliver into my customer base that will generate value, whether that's financial value for the organization or maybe increasing a customer's expectation. One example I heard of was LG, the equipment white goods manufacturer, among other things. they're using data about the lifespan of the fridge bulb, and you get a new one through the post before yours fails, so that you have the new piece of equipment ready to install when your bulb goes out. Excuse me. That's Infonomics. That's understanding. I know about the component. I have measured it. I understand its reliability. I know who my customers are who bought a particular device with that component in. I put those two pieces of content together. I can do something really good from a customer experience, customer success, loyalty perspective. I don't think there's enough of this going on. Doug Laney is the ex-Gartner analyst that wrote the book Infonomics. He has a second book called Data Juice, which is 101 case studies for the implementation of Infonomics. I would strongly recommend, if you haven't read these or haven't come across this as a principle, as a BA, I think it's an excellent extra arrow in our quiver. When we can begin to talk about information value in the organization, it drives a different perspective, which I'll talk about a little bit more. The third one is this speed of decision making. So given that the pace of change is so aggressive, we should enable our organizations to make decisions at that same speed. And the reality is there is a very high correlation between the speed of decision and the quality of the decision. In fact, 500,000 days a year lost to slow decision making last year, which is another $250 million worth of decision making loss. And I view that as lost opportunity cost. If you are not able to make a good decision for your organization that benefits the business, benefits customers, creates a competitive advantage in a timely manner, you can guarantee your competitors are doing that, and that could lead to market loss share, etc. And so we need to be able to move at pace. We need to be able to be delivering insights to leaders quickly. Good enough is good enough in order to enable a decision to be made that doesn't rely on the group saying yes, because there is also evidence that as soon as we get into group decision making, typically it ends up in a no, and we can't afford to stagnate. And so I connect this to the rate of transformation failure. Is that because we are not able to deliver insight at a pace that allows for that decision-making speed? Therefore, everything slows down, paralysis by analysis, and I'm sure that you have been there. So how do we go faster? How do we create rapid innovation cycles? How do we deliver this content into the hands of our leaders faster and better, so that we can be a nimble and agile organization? That's my third kind of point of curiosity. And the final one are the tools that we have access to. We've traditionally relied on business process modeling, and it has its place, but I think it's overused. I think there are other things out there that we could add to our toolbox that would allow us to become a broader resource for an organization. And so things like information flow modeling, which looks at the data and information flow through a business, and how do we understand what people are using and how they're using it, what perspective of our organization does that provide? The digital twin of the organization, so taking the digital twin concept, building models of how the business operates so that we can simulate change before we do any work in the real world in order to understand the impact that will have, provide that information to leaders. I keep falling back to Lean Six Sigma as a methodology for the identification and removal of waste. And how can we bring that into the business process modeling world, so that we can identify these opportunities faster and enable the organization to understand the impact of that change. And of course, we must not forget today AI-driven modeling tools, which will at some point consume all manner of data inside our organizations and will be used to automatically generate automation, as an example. And this is already happening, not so much in the generative AI space, but using machine learning to drive outcomes for organizations. And we need to be aware of it, know when to apply it, which tools are associated with making the best use out of AI. So those are my those are my 4 kind of curiosity points. They're the things that I think about a lot. I wouldn't say I wake up in the morning or the middle of the night thinking about them, but when I talk with people, when we are in our process of delivering services as a consulting practice, these are the kind of topics that I bring up with people. These are the questions I ask of other people and work through in order just to understand the state of the environment, what people have tried in the past, what has worked, what has not worked, in order to form a view myself of how we can start to impact the more negative side of this conversation, flip that round, make it a really positive and interesting and almost exciting space to play in. So that's, like I said, a bit of an insight into my brain. So then I see this, and I can't see who's online watching this. When I've done this presentation in person, there are wry smiles at this point. We often see people relying on very analog mechanisms for drawing content out of people and being able to convert that into useful assets that the organization can use. And this analog first approach relies on digitalization of this content at some point, typically later, which means you are bringing your own bias into the analysis that you create as you build this content. You may have forgotten what people actually said. You might miss the context of the content. You probably take a photo of this using your phone. You go back to your desk, and a period of time later, which could be days, weeks later, you have some content that you need to go back and share with the participants of this meeting, and they can't even remember what they said. They've moved on. It's 2 weeks later, business as usual is going on, and we end up in this rework loop, which just slows everything down. So I see this as being one of the challenges that we have. This is great to some degree from a visual perspective and an interactive perspective, but may not get us the content that we need for that agility and speed. I also look at this, and I want to reiterate, I am not picking on business process modeling notation as a specific thing. I'm just highlighting that we've created something that is very complex. I liken this to the legend on a topographic map. If you don't understand the legend, you can't read the map. If you don't understand this notation, you can't necessarily understand the diagram that has been created, and how do I extract knowledge from it that becomes useful. And potentially we then start to devalue this because it is too complicated, it takes too long, people don't understand it, and therefore it is not necessarily as useful as it might have been or could be. And that's borne out by things like this, which is a Visio diagram that I was presented with from a customer a little while ago. It's 5 years old. It's been put into the digital dusty drawer. It was done at a point in time. People have done their best to articulate the process. It's very complicated. There are many steps. There's lots of other models that you have to look at. It's not particularly easy to interpret it. And so you do end up with this, which is a swim lane view of a process with no control. They're not using any of the notation, and probably have done this because it's simple and it provides a framework that people can talk around. But is there value in this as a picture? How do we understand things about our organization, whether they are as efficient and as effective as they can be if we have this type of content? I personally don't believe that it's particularly helpful beyond the stage of some initial capture of structure so that you can then elicit further detail and more content. So we at LINQ are trying to resolve this by building a platform that business analysts, change leaders, transformation teams can use, where they can filter out the noise of an organization to make good decisions. You can capture content and do analysis really quickly. The insights are baked inside the platform. We are able, because it's fast, we can do complete discovery, so we can go end to end, and we can understand the consequence of change in one part of the business to all other parts of the business. Because of that, we can innovate. We can increase these innovation cycles. We can go faster, and we enable this digital first approach. We call that thinking like LINQ. That's a lot of our content, and even our URL is thinklikelink.com. It's a mindset and a methodology as well as a platform. And I want to show you in 15 minutes, so that we have some time for Q&A, just how quickly we can take traditional content that probably exists inside an organization today, convert it into this new structure, and then gain insight from it as a means to just increase the value of the content that we might already have inside the business. So we're going to follow the beginnings of this cycle that we have created, where we build current state models, we gain insight from the content that we're capturing. We're able to define future states, so we can do ideation, we can understand and model what we would look like after we have done the implementation. We use the comparison between current state and future state to define the impact of that change. We still haven't done anything for real. These are all in models. That enables a decision to be made, a go, no go, potentially very quickly to go around this loop again and do a different future state because there's another option. But we are measuring the value of the change, so that impact assessment, so that people understand what good looks like, have metrics for success, can think about the benefit realization of an incremental or a significant change inside an organization before we make any investment in people and money. So that's the methodology that the platform that we built exposes to users. Based on a very simple language, this couldn't be any more different than the BPMN diagram. We have 4 things that we think about inside LINQ: information, action, system, people. So actions are any process or transaction that takes place. And we basically suggest that these actions create content, data and information. And that data and information then enables the next action to take place. So we have this information supply chain, action, information, etc. That leads to an information product that will enable a business outcome. That's the process that we're following. And then we have the enablers of that flow, which are roles and systems. So roles perform actions, people do work. And in order to do that work, we use a system, whether it's a paper notebook or it's a CRM or a GIS system. We are typically using a system to perform an action, but systems also can automate actions. We may have bought something that does automation. The platform may be coded to do things like alert people when statuses change, etc. And systems supply information so that we understand the format that the content's in. And the reason we think this is really useful is my observation over the last decade is that people only work the way they work because of the information and data that they have access to. So if we give people poor data, they will manipulate it first to then be able to get back into their process to do their work. And this view allows us to find those things that take place, and then we have an opportunity to do something about it. So we're going to quickly take this process, which an IIBA member in Wellington provided me a while back. This is a basis of design process flow. So the basis of design is a document that gets created as we're building new projects, and it is completed by an engineer, and then it is has some governance associated with it, where some assessments are made before we get approval, and then it feeds into the project implementation process. So fairly standard process model, some decision points. But the things that are missing are which systems are needed to make this process efficient, which data and information is created. Might there be a better way of creating that content? How much does this process cost? Which resources are required? Do they have the capacity to do this as part of their role? Those are all questions that I think we should be able to answer. So what I'm going to do is throw this content into LINQ. So I am going to, this is LINQ, this is our platform, SaaS platform, hosted in Azure in Sydney. This is the model that we're going to build. This acronym HOIP stands for, here's one I prepared earlier in true demo style, just in case, because we're doing this live. But I'm going to take the content that was in that process diagram and build it basically into a model in LINQ. So we are going to create a model. I've got some content pre-prepared. So this is basis of design. I need to give it a description. So in the background, in preparation for this, I have run this prompt inside an AI. I've given it the PDF of the process model. I've asked it to extract each of the steps from the process model. I've asked it to track who is doing the work. So now we've got this process, rather than it being that Visio diagram, it's just a bulleted list of process steps with some content associated with the step. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to throw it into LINQ. So we're just going to put our description here. I'm going to say this is a management process and I'm going to click create model. And the tool that we're going to be using is here on the right hand side. It's create your model using AI. So we have implemented this tool inside our platform where it will make use of content we already have, or going and looking at publicly available content to be able to build data in our structure. So I'm just going to change the industry here to electricity generation. And down here in the detailed description, I'm going to paste in the result of the AI building this prompt for me. So all of this content here is effectively the bulleted list of that same process. So we're going to pop that into the detailed description. And the other content I have is I've got a list of roles. So at the top here, these are all of the roles involved in the process as a comma separated list. So I'm just going to pop that in here. And we'll throw it into the roles, and then I can click generate model. So this will take about 30 seconds. So what's happening is all of this data is being compiled. Our AI is understanding what's the action. It's making some determination of the information that has been created as a result of doing that work. That's the piece which is generally missing in business process modeling notation. It's what content do I need to perform this action, and what content is produced as a result of doing that work. So we have to make some of our own determinations, which is why the AI is useful, because it can go and find potentially other basis of design processes which exist in other organizations, but within the context that we've given it, which is electricity generation. So it's not going to go and find basis of design for a project for a new type of bread. So we're putting some constraint in to the way that it works. And in a time period, it comes back and generates us this content. So we now have, following that information actions system people structure, we have got a representation of that process model, but now inside LINQ. So some things that you can see, the capture action, capture the project need, the need statement. We then do a review of that. We've got to draft the basis of design document. We mark it as done. We submit it. It goes to pre-governance. Out of pre-governance, it might need some additional governance work. This is not perfect. There are things missing. We don't have any systems on information nodes. So, we would want to go through this and kind of complete the picture. We'd also want to check things like, do we have the right number of items being processed? So we can look at that all the way down here at the capture action. And we can see we've got 4 each month taking 2 days. And we might want to change that. We might change this to once a fortnight. And rather than it taking 2 days, this takes 8 hours. And by doing that, we now push a different volume of work through this process. But it's been structured for us to the point that I can immediately get data associated with this process if what it has assumed is correct in terms of volumes of work and how long these actions take. We've already captured 13,000 hours worth of role time in this model. And I can immediately go and look at the role, and I can look at hours, and I get to understand how many hours each role has to invest in pushing this once a fortnight process of design document through this process. I can look at the systems that are used and understand how many hours we spend in each of the systems that are required. And I have an opportunity to modify this as I need to. And so to show you where this can go to, I have, as I said, in true style, I've created the one I made earlier, which I've done a bit of work to, just to show you some of the extra insights that we're able to determine by completing the model very, very quickly. I've done no work in recapture. I've added some people cost to the roles. I've added some system cost to the systems. And now, based on this insight dashboard, I get this wealth of content, and it's taken about 5 minutes from having the Visio diagram to being able to put the content into LINQ to validate some of the data in order to be able to start talking to people about the cost of roles, the amount of time that it takes to deliver the work, what level of automation that we have inside our this particular system, what are the inputs that we rely on, what are the outputs that are generated as we go through this process, which are the actions, which actions cost the most, which actions take the most time. If we look at the hours per item, we can see the cycle time that is required to push a single entity through this particular process. How are my actions made up? Are they automated? Are they manual? Do I have people using systems to do this? Which roles require the most time in this process? 48% of the process is input by the project engineer. Does that role have enough capacity to be able to do this? What happens if the number of bases of design that I have to produce in a year goes up? Does that have an impact on my engineering team? Do I need to create more capacity for them? And so we have all of this data readily available to us, and we even have data inside the model, because I can change the view to simplify it. I can just look at single roles and systems. So this is a pseudo swim lane view, especially if I turn it and make it left to right instead. I might just look at the supply chain only, so just show me the information and actions that are making up this process and ignore the roles for the time being. So we can very quickly modify what we're looking at. I can group this, if I just go back to all nodes, I can group this by content that I've created already. So I've got some analysis tags that I've created, and now I can group by these tags in order to have a simplified process. And I can do things like tell me how much time I'm spending in rework. So I've got a filter on rework, and I can now see that I'm spending 1,364 hours a year just managing rework through the process. So very quickly, we move from a static model with a picture that represents a process to real data inside a platform that we can manipulate, we can filter, we can slice, we can utilize for running scenarios to understand the impact. And this is just the first part of the process, because we're only dealing with current state. And so our next step would be, okay, how do we make this process more efficient? What might we do to it? We have an ideation session, we capture the future state inside LINQ, and it starts to present us with the impact that change would have to the organization, at which point we do an implementation, our future state becomes our current state, and then we are now able to enter into this continuous improvement cycle without having to start at the very beginning, which is to go and capture a current state model, because we already have it. So this is our response to those 4 questions which intrigue me. The product that we're building, that we are enabling people to have access to and use, in the hope that we do create some of this curiosity. So I just want to finish by presenting this conclusion, really, which is where I think our expertise needs to move to, which is we've got to extend our toolkit. We can't just rely on business process modeling to do everything that needs to be done today. We have to look for digital twin, information flow modeling. We have to be able to use AI, etc. We should be looking at other methodologies and increasing our toolkit. If we don't, our organizations, I think, are prone to slow, suboptimal change, which will eventually mean that they lose a competitive advantage, and they'll be dragons kind of thing. And so if we can embrace these broadened sets of tools and methodologies, I think as a business analyst inside an organization, we absolutely have an opportunity to increase our value, to extend our sphere of influence within an organization, and actually start contributing to the way that an organization can respond to the environment that we find ourselves in today. So I hope that has presented some curiosity. I hope I've shown you some practical things that you could go and do. Here are my list of contact information. Very happy for you to drop me a line. And we've got maybe 4 minutes for some questions, Nikki. So
yes, I've got a question from Jeff. He says you've converted a Visio diagram using AI to input into your system. So do users have a dependency to use AI to feed into this model? So he just wants to explain the reliance on AI here.
Yeah, no reliance on AI at all. You can build this model entirely manually. We have a drag-click approach, pretty much like any other modeling tool, where you can quickly convert content you already have yourself. You don't need to use the AI. The AI is just a mechanism whereby we can move from no content to some content very quickly, then maybe spend more time in QC as opposed to actually having to capture the content. But no, the tool has been built so that you can capture content in real time whilst the workshop is taking place. And if you head to the website, you follow our YouTube channel, you'll see plenty of examples where I talk about how quickly we can capture content from a blank screen. So absolutely no dependency on the AI. It's just an additional tool that you can utilize to go faster.
Thank you, Neil. That was excellent. I think everyone's enthralled by your presentation. It's been really good. If there's anyone else, any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Neil, did you want to share your screen about how people can contact you if they want to? Just share it again.
I'm not in control of it. There we go.
There you go. Wonderful.
Yeah. Feel free. You can email me directly. Please do connect on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to be connected there. The call to action is please go and have a go yourself. LINQ is entirely free for you to start. You don't need a credit card. We give you a free amount of content to get started. So that's nodes, information action system, people nodes, users, and projects. If you stay within those free limits, LINQ's free forever. We are really keen on feedback. We want BAs in particular to come and say, this is good, this is rubbish. Here's an idea that I've got. So please head to my.thinklikelinq.com. You can sign up for free. You can follow the onboarding. We've got tutorials baked into the platform. I'm open to any feedback at all that people can give us.
What a great offer. Now, I've just had a late question, Neil. He said, Sanjay says he loves it. Does the tool also scope out outcomes as epics and features, or break it down further? Any extension integration?
It's a great question. It's one of the outputs that we are trying to automatically generate. At the moment, the way that you would do that is through tags. So you would generate a tag group with those outcomes that you are looking for, maybe the epics that you need to categorize things into, and the comparison data that you get from comparing a current state to a future state can be filtered by those tags, which therefore are epics, and that would help you basically build out your list of outcomes that are required to meet those epics. So it's a roundabout way of saying yes, but we absolutely know that we can do more, and right now we're exploring different ways of presenting the content that we capture inside the platform. So
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. With an offer like that, I think lots of VAs will be jumping online to have a good look around the system. I hope that has given everyone a good insight into LINQ, and we're going to have to close it because we're just bang on time. Virtual round of applause for you, Neil. Thank you very much, and don't forget
really
to reach out, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you in the next session.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.